Afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark, and I'm an alcoholic. I don't know if you all caught Ashley's face when she got up here. That's exactly how my stomach feels right now. So thank you, Ashley. I often like to start off by qualifying just to say that it is by the good graces of the doctors, the counselors, the nurses at the Homewood Treatment Facility that I attended, Alcoholics Anonymous, the fellowship, my mentors, my friends, my sponsor, Brian Kay out of the Prince George Group in Hamilton, Ontario, the 12 Steps, this big book, and the God of my understanding that keeps me clean and sober today. And I'm ever grateful for that. I'd like to thank the committee, especially John, for asking me to participate here today. It's always an honor and a privilege, and it really is a special moment for me to be up here, to be able to be a part of this. And for a guy who never wanted to be a part of anything, I've grown to love Alcoholics Anonymous. And I will continue to strive to be a part of this in any capacity as long as I continue to toe the line and stay connected spiritually. And I had the privilege of perusing our topic today of victim versus responsibility or responsible a little prior to today. And I don't know, I think I'm of that age that every time that I see that word versus, that VS, it always makes me reflect back to playing Street Fighter, the video game, because it was always like versus, you know, and so the struggle is real. Today, I like to say that if there was a fight between victim and responsible, I'd like to say that responsible wins out. That wasn't always the case. I like that we're guided, and Urias had read out of the big book, looking at step 4, the instructions there, and really kind of starting to become awakened to the fact of the difference between victim or victimization and responsibility. Because for me, as an active alcoholic, I played what I like to call the victim card quite often, quite regularly. I used circumstances, situations, relationships in my life as a way to justify, rationalize, think that everything was okay, that allowed me to continue to consume the amounts of alcohol that I was consuming on such a regular basis. I would say stuff to people like, well, you know what, if you lived the life that I lived, you would probably drink too. If you hung out with the guys that I hung out with, then you would probably drink too. If those people did what they did to you, what they did to me, then you would probably drink too. I use that card quite often. I'm the victim. I'm the one that's being hurt. I'm the one that's being attacked. I'm the one that's, being targeted here. And I believed that. I really did. And what I like about what Urias read, fancied or real. When I first came in Alcoholics Anonymous, one of my mentors, one of the guys that I listened to quite frequently on CDs and speaker tapes, was a guy by the name of Clancy out of California, and he gave a talk about the disease of perception. And that really resonated with me. I really did not understand that until he kind of broke it down, and he says, part of my disease is the fact that when I look at things, I look at them uniquely in ways that I want to look at them, not necessarily as they are or what the reality may be. I have a tendency to skew things. I have a tendency to make things look the way that I want them to look so that I can get what I want when I want and how I want it. That disease of perception has been with me, as far as I can remember, as far as I can look back on my experiences, on my history. I've managed to take situations or relationships and twist and turn to my advantage. And one of those things that I did do is use those circumstances, those situations that I thought were damaging towards me, that were against me, that were opposing me, as I'm the victim. I'm the guy that's getting hurt here, and it's okay for me to seek relief. And relief to me looks like a bottle. So when I look at that disease of perception, the big book talks about it, and it uses the terminology delusion. And I like that term. I really do, because to me it really identifies that when I'm thinking like that, it's not real. It's not factual. It's just my interpretation of that. It's my skewed vision of it. And one of the things I love when we talk about delusion, and I latch it with the term victim, it can be found on page 61. And it just simply says here that he becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is his basic trouble? Is he not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? And that was the entirety of my drinking career. I was this actor. I was consistently and constantly manipulating, conning, lying, cheating, stealing, doing all these things so that I was trying to get what I wanted, when I wanted, and how I wanted to, thinking that only if I'd get it, I would be happy. That delusion, that skewed thinking, put me in that position to be the victim. Now, understanding that that's what I carried around with me for years in ignorant alcoholism, coming into AA, the barriers started to break down. You people started to teach me what was real and what wasn't real, where my views, my ideas, my concepts were skewed. That perception was off. And it really broke down for me once I started to put pen to paper in the inventory work of step 4, that I started to really see how far off I was with my own thoughts, my own concepts, my own ideas, and what was really going on in the world, in the relationships I had, the situations and the scenarios. Brought to even a clearer vision was when I sat down with somebody in a 5th step. My sponsor at the time sat me down, and we went through all those things, all those struggles and all those strifes and all those troubles and turmoils and what have you, all that anger that was being pent up and carried around, and this victim card that I kept on using. When we looked at that, when we dissected that, when we identified those things, we were able to put them down and see what was real and what wasn't. And for me, I will give you an example of one of those things that I had written down on my very first inventory when I was about 4 months sober. I had a resentment to the police. I don't know if that's common, but I had it. And my sponsor he's a decent guy, he was a decent sponsor. He asked me to break that down. He says, that's a little too general. You know, do you have anyone specifically in the police force that you're holding a grudge against? And I did. And I didn't even realize it until that moment. You know, because for years, my perception had skewed to the point where I just hated all police officers, when in reality, I was really only upset with one police officer. But every time I saw a cop, that represented the one person that I was angry at, and so I just didn't like them all. But when I was able to whittle that down and identify the one person that affected me the way that he affected me for so long, we were able to start to see the work that was needed, that was required for me to change and transform. Now, when I was 15 years old, I did what most normal people, at least what I thought normal people would do. I hung out with guys who would drink on Fridays and Saturdays, and bush parties and barn parties and field parties. And we would go to construction sites, and we would drink in these half-built houses. You know, we were just mayhem seekers and chaos inciters. And we were just having fun, you know, enjoying the drink, enjoying the bottle, and having a laugh, and doing some crazy stuff. And one night we were in a construction zone, and we're half lit. We've been drinking, and sure enough, we see cherries coming around. The police, the sirens and the lights were on, and so we disperse. We break up. We start to run, and we all run in separate ways. And I had a police officer, and he was actually on my tail. He was chasing me. And so we were running. He was behind me. I'm running. and I'm hopping over some fences, I'm running in between houses, and I'm going through these fields and through ditches, and he finally catches me, and he tackles me, and I get thrown into the ground, and I get handcuffed. He puts his knee on my back, and I'm cuffed, and we're strolling back to the police car, and he puts me in the car, and I think he's going to drive me to the police station. He doesn't drive me to the police station. He takes me to an industrial section of our town, and he pulls me out of the car, and he gets me to get on my hands and knees. And he pulls a phone book out of the trunk of his car, and he puts it on my back, and he took a baton, and he beat me with the baton. He beat me, I couldn't tell you, maybe a dozen times. But when that was all said and done, he took the handcuffs off, the handcuffs were off. He kept them off. He said, "That's it, get out of here." And he left me there. And so I found a way home, and I was angry. I think most 15-year-olds would be. However, I took that anger and I turned it into a card, the victim card. And any time that I would feel the necessity to satisfy, to indulge, to quell my urges, my addictions, my obsessions to drink, I would pull out this card. I would say, you know what? I need a drink. I deserve a drink. Look what happened to me. Now, 23 years later, at 38 years old, 4 months sober, I'm sitting in a Tim Hortons across my sponsor, and we're going through a fifth step, and that police officer comes up. And I look at him and I say, I don't know where my faults are in this, save the fact that I was underage drinking in a restricted area where I shouldn't be, trespassing. And avoiding incarceration, running from the cops. So my sponsor, being the good sponsor that he was, he said, the fact of the matter is yes, those things that you did are your faults. On top of that, the fault that you're having is that you're still holding on to that. You're still holding on to the fact that this power that this police officer had over you at that moment is still on you today. And what we're looking at here is that entire shift in perspective. And I couldn't see it, but my sponsor said to me, he said, "Mark, maybe, just maybe, possibly, that police officer that was chasing you didn't know whether or not you had a knife or a gun on you, didn't know whether or not you were going to attack him, didn't know whether or not he was going to get home to see his wife or his kids. Maybe, just maybe, and we're not justifying it here, but maybe we're looking at it from a different angle by saying that maybe he was scared. Maybe he was frightened. Maybe he was fearing for his own life. And while the things that he did were not justified, the motives behind it can be." From there was a shift into that responsibility that I like to look at today. That responsibility is that I don't have to play that victim anymore. Through a new set of lenses, through a new set of eyes, through a new different perspective, I'm able to let go of that anger. I'm able to let go of that resentment. I don't have any ill will to that police officer today, nor any other police officer for that matter. I don't have a problem with cops today, which is really wild. But the truth of the matter is that I get freedom there when I start to look at these things, when I start to be able to dissect them and I be able to identify the things that I've been carrying, whether they're real or fancied. I can break them down and I can be free to them. Today what I like to look at is that I don't have to live in those delusions anymore. I'm not the alpha and the omega of my own perceptions. I have a host of friends in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a ton of mentors that I look up to and I seek out and I call upon. And I have my sponsor, and God love my sponsor, that I can reach out to him and I can ask him, "Hey man, I'm thinking about things this way. Is there another perspective I could look at it as?" And that's just it. I don't have to do these things on my own anymore. I don't have to, try to figure them out, try to analyze them and come up with a solution all by myself. To me, the beauty of it is that now that I'm a part of rather than apart from, I have you people. I have you people to look to. And I absolutely adore that. I really do. I don't know how much more time I got, but I thought we were going to have like a 5 or a 2 guy, but I don't know if I overextended or not. I didn't even know what time I started at. But I'm going to turn it over to Janice anyways, because I think I've shared enough today. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was very good. And now for our second panelist from the Paris Breakfast Group. Please help me welcome Janice F.
Okay. I just want to make sure I get the microphone to my mouth because, like, I'm only 4'11". So, can you hear me? Can you see me? That's the important thing. Okay. Okay, well, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a member of the Paris Breakfast Group in Paris, Ontario, and my name is Janice. And my name is not Hannah, and I know Hannah is on the program, but Hannah came down with a cold, I think it was, that John said, and so I got nailed outside, so here I am to replace. Now, thank you, John. I don't know if I should thank you or not. But I'm not prepared, but I'm just turned it over to the higher power, and here I am. So whatever comes out, blame the higher power. Don't blame me, okay? So thank you. That was wonderful. You gave a good description of, you know, the victim versus the responsibility. And I can tell you, it was Janice versus everybody else. Janice versus everybody else. My problem was I always thought the world was out to get me, and I couldn't deal with life on life's terms. I came from an alcoholic home. My dad, as a young kid, I watched my dad beat the living daylights out of my mom right up until my mom left my dad when I was about 8 or 9 years old. So I was terrified, so I come to learn fear at a very young age, and I didn't know what to do with it. But I can tell you I was afraid of everything. And the only way I dealt with fear is fighting with people. So once I got alcohol in my system, you know what I was like. I'd start fighting with people, and that was the only way I could communicate with people. So I'd start fist fighting with them, and I got myself into a lot of trouble. I was a blackout drinker. When I drank, I blacked out, and when I blacked out, I did things that I never in my wildest dreams ever thought I was capable of doing, but I did it. And when I would come to and look around to see where I ended up and what was going on, I would be full of shame and fear. And fear, like I said, I come to know at a young age, so it was a horrible way to live. There was many times I contemplated committing suicide because I didn't like the way I lived, but I didn't know what to do about it. It's funny, last night up in our room, I was looking out the window, I took a picture of the Toronto sign, I put it on Facebook. Hey, everybody, look at this. But that skating rink across the street was a safe haven for me at times. I was born and raised here in Toronto, just down the street in Parkdale. And I remember at 6 years old jumping on a streetcar, taking the streetcar and up to the skating rink here, and skating for hours on the ice there just to stay away from what was going on down the street at our house. My dad would come home drunk, and he would beat up my mom, and I would stand at the end of the stairs, and I would just scream and holler inside, please don't kill my mom, because if you kill my mom, we're left with you. And I hated my dad. I didn't know him, and I was just so afraid of him. And finally, one day, my mom left him, and I'll tell you, it was the happiest day of my life. But the damage was done to me, you know. It was horrible inside. I like I said, so I discovered what alcohol could do for me. Once I got that drink into me, my whole life, everything just changed. My whole perception just changed of everything, and I couldn't get enough of the alcohol. And then it came to a point where the alcohol, I couldn't drink it anymore. I couldn't live with it, and I couldn't live without it. I got to that jumping off point, and I didn't know what to do. I know that every time I woke up, I would say, okay, that's it, I'm done, I'm finished, no more. But within a couple of hours, my mind would be taking me right back to, you know, that sense of ease and comfort. All my life I was restless, irritable, and discontent and didn't know it. I thought that's the way everybody lived. And then alcohol would take that restlessness away. And I come to learn that I had no defense about picking up that first drink. I didn't have a defense at all. I had no upbringing of any kind of spiritual beliefs or anything. It was like everybody was out for themselves, and everybody was always pounding on everybody, and that's the kind of life that I knew. So like, you put me out in the world, and I don't know how to act, I don't know how to behave, I don't know what to do with myself, and I always felt out of place. And it was a horrible place to be. So I come to finally get to Alcoholics Anonymous, and how I get to Alcoholics Anonymous was not the greatest way. I carried on, and then one day I was drinking and got behind the wheel of my car and went through a red light and got into a very bad car accident, and a couple of people were hurt very badly. And I don't even remember this day. All I remember is the white lines of the road, and what I was told was, as I was going through a red light, and as I was proceeding going through the red light, traffic was coming both ways, and the one car made a quick right-hand turn to avoid me, and when she made that right-hand turn, her car had flipped over, and she suffered a lot of damage, especially facial damage from the actions of me. And so they had to use the jaws of life to get her out. When they got her out, they rushed her to the hospital. They put me in a cell, and they told me, and when I came to the next day, I remember the OPP officer saying to me, if you better pray to God that this woman doesn't die, because her condition is life-threatening. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was something like I would see in a movie or something, and all of a sudden I'm in this. I'm actually in this. And I'll tell you something, that really brought me right to reality. Like, this thing is happening. And so finally, a couple of hours I sat in that cell, and then finally I was released on a promise to appear, and the woman that I hurt pretty badly, they said her condition upgraded and that she was going to be okay. And I was not even thinking, oh, thank God she's going to be okay. The first thing I want to do is get out of there and drink. I just want to get out and drink. Like I said, I had no defense, and the only time I could get out of anything was take a drink. And so that's what I did. So moving fast forward, I'm just going to grab my water there. So moving fast forward, I was charged with impaired driving causing bodily harm, and a few years later I was to finally show up in court to face the consequences of my actions. And when that day came, I didn't show up at court, and they put a bench warrant out for me. So I was on the run for about a couple of years. And then my boyfriend at the time, he was incarcerated in an institution, and members of Alcoholics Anonymous were coming to carry the message to him. And while they were carrying the message to him, he was carrying the message to me. And that's how I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. When he came out, he took me to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, which was the Sunnyside group, which was just down the road a bit, and introduced me to some people. And then when I started to come to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and for about a couple of years, and then one day I thought that maybe I could drink again, and I ended up picking up another drink after a couple of years of in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then 28 years ago on last Sunday, I woke up underneath my dining room table after another bender, and just remember rolling over and looking at the ceiling and saying, oh no, not again. But I'm grateful today because I celebrate 28 years of sobriety, and I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd ever be living the life that I live today. And that's thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, when I got here, I was a mess, and there was a lot of things that I had to do, and there was a lot of things that I had to clear up. And the first thing that I had to do, and my sponsor pounded it in me and saying that, Janice, the first thing you got to do is you got to start clearing the records of your past, and you have to go and face the music with this impaired driving charge. And so I did. And when I went to the police station with my sponsor and a few members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I remember walking into the police station, giving them my name. They CPEC'd me, and they seen that there was a bench warrant out for my arrest, and they handcuffed me and took me into custody. And when they took me into custody, they brought me to the courthouse, and I thought I wasn't going to get bail, and I was all prepared to stay in jail until my court date. And then I went up in front of the same judge that I was to appear a few years earlier, And the judge looked at me and said to me that he was very happy that I made the decision to come in front of him and give myself up. So he let me out, but this time not on a promise to appear, because my promises meant nothing. And he released me on a bond. So my family members came and put the surety up for me to be released, and I was to go back in 6 weeks to face the sentencing of this accident. In the meantime, my sponsor got a hold of me and started doing the work with me. And when we got to the fourth and the fifth step, now my grudge list was like 27 pages long of people I didn't like, because I just hated the whole world. And I thought the whole world was out to get me, but the first one on that list was my father, a man that I was terrified of. And when I put that, he did this, that, and da-da-da, and da-da-da, and then what it affected, and then when it got to, we're going to look at this at an entirely different angle, and then my sponsor started pointing out stuff like, my sponsor started pointing out stuff like, Janice, don't you think that's selfish of you to resent your father as much as you do? Don't you believe that he has a problem with alcohol like you do? And I couldn't see it that way. And don't you think that he maybe wanted to be a good father, but he wasn't able to be a good father because he has this disease? And I didn't see that either. And don't you think that if he could have found Alcoholics Anonymous like you did, maybe his life would have changed and turned around like yours has? And when you were drinking, did you not do any emotional damage to your children? And I said, yes, I did. And all of a sudden, everything just turned around. The resentment and the hatred that I felt for my dad just started to disappear. I said that prayer for him and asked God to remove the resentment from me and help me and then all of a sudden there was compassion towards my dad. And lo and behold, God works in mysterious ways, because I hadn't seen my dad since the day my mom packed up and moved away from Parkdale, and that was like, I was now married with a couple of children. We're talking 25 years later. And the OPP called my brother and said to my brother that my dad wants to find his family. Would you happen to be one of his sons? And when my brother said, yes, I am, and he said, well, he wants to see his family. So my brother called me, and when he called me, I was the first one that jumped at it, that I wanted to, because I had to put my dad on my amends list. So God made it possible for me to be able to make that amends to him. And so we jumped in the car a couple days later. He was up in Drumble in a nursing home. And I walked in, I'll never forget it, and I looked at him, and he was the same looking man that I saw when I was 7 and 8 years old. He looked the same, he just had a little bit of gray hair. And I couldn't believe it. I just broke down crying. And I was able to sit and have a conversation with this man for the first time in my life and ask him, Dad, did you ever consider going to Alcoholics Anonymous? He said, I did, but I was too afraid. And I thought, wow, he was too afraid. And so we got to chat, and I got to know him a little bit, and then I started to visit him, and I told him that I loved him, which I hated him all my life. And I told him that I loved him, and that what could I do for you? Is there any way I could be of service and be helpful to you? And he didn't say too much, but then I left, and then I started to visit him a lot, and he became part of my life for a little bit. And then one day he said to me, Janice, I want to get out of here. Can you help me get an apartment? And you take care of my pension money, and you pay the rent, and you do this and you do that. And I said, well, I don't know. And then I went to see him again, and he was drunk, and he was doing things like, you shouldn't do, like going to the bathroom in the middle of the living room in the daytime when everybody was standing there and stuff like that. And so I went back and I told my sponsor, this is going on, and he wants me to help him with an apartment, and what should I do? And, I don't want to be resentful. Resentment is the number one offender. I don't want to go back and go back to my old ideas or anything like that. And she said to me, Janice, you have to really look at this seriously. If you take on this responsibility, you have your life, you have your children, you have everything, and you want to take on that responsibility. And she said, pray about it. So I prayed about it, and I prayed about it, and I asked God, is this your will for me, God? Or is this just something that I want to do? And then a couple of days, after praying about it, I woke up and the feeling inside of me just said, no, Janice, don't take on that responsibility. You know, God gave you the chance to get together with him now. I don't know what's going to happen. And so I went back up to visit him one more time, and I told him, and he was very angry with me. He told me to get out of there and get lost and all that. And I left, and I haven't seen him since. And that was when I was 6 months sober. So that was like almost 27 and a half years ago. I haven't seen him. But God brought us together at that point for me to be able to make amends with him and to tell him how I felt, and I was able to hear how he felt. And it didn't matter how it worked out the way it was supposed to. And that's how my life is today. You know, I have learned to deal with life on life's terms. God doesn't give me too much to handle in one day. So, you know, I try to do my best each and every day. You know, I love alcohol. I'll tell you, I just love Alcoholics Anonymous. What it's done for me and what it's done for my children and our lives and the opportunities that have come my way through my lifetime. I am just so grateful. Even when the difficult times come, you know, God has given me the tools to be able to deal with life, whatever comes down that pipe. Because you know what? We can't go wrong. Like, you know what? I'm trying to find the words, but it's just not coming. But, you know, everything works out the way it's supposed to. You know, we make plans. You know, life is not, you know, it's not what we plan. We make the plans, but we never predict the outcome. And I'm grateful for that. So my job today is only to accept what happens and let things unfold the way that they're supposed to. And as long as I let things unfold the way they're supposed to and not try to go in there and arrange life to suit me like I did all my life before I was able to understand this and ask God, and just to keep the God of my understanding and the communication of the God of my understanding open, and try to go with what's inside of me, and that's where the God of my understanding is deep down inside of me. So I thank you again for listening, and I thank you, God, all of you, for my life today. Thank you.